We Share This Earth is a board book about the interconnectedness of people and nature around the world. Through rhyme and colorful illustrations, it invites children to celebrate the power of community. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and welcome to the Kids Bookshelf. Ahead, we'll explore the book, and I'll talk with the author about the inspiration behind it. I requested and was provided with a copy of the book, but this video is not sponsored. Dan Sachs is a best-selling author, musician, music educator, and host of the children's podcast, Noodle Loaf. He joins us to talk about We Share This Earth. It's part of a series of community board books. Dan, welcome to the Kids Bookshelf.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we talk about this specific book, tell us about the community board book series.
Sure. So this is the second series that I've written. The first series was about families, because families are sort of the first relational part of a child's life. And so the idea with this series was to zoom out a bit, starting out with schools, which is another early community in a child's life, and then neighborhoods. And this book is We Share This Earth. So the idea kind of being that a child and a parent can see the love that's within their family, within their neighborhood, and kind of superimpose that into other communities and other experiences, all the way for this book to the global community. And have a sort of a first introduction to that.
Dan, can you read a small portion of the book for us so people can hear how you've used rhyme to tell this story?
I would be honored. I'll read the first few pages if that's okay. Every baby ever born who cried a little cry, any night spent lying out, gazing at the sky, all the breaths deeply breathed of crisp forest air happened on this planet Earth that you and I both share.
Well, you touched on this a little bit, but tell us a bit more about the story that readers are going to find in this book.
So We Share This Earth. It's about the people, really, that inhabit the Earth, and the connection that they have to the Earth, the responsibility that they have to the Earth and to each other. And so part of the story is that no matter where you are in the world, I mean, I guess part of the job here was to make the world feel a little bit smaller and to make each of these, there's specific places, very specific places in the book. So each illustration, it's like, a street scene in the Philippines and a beach scene in Australia and a house in California. And so the idea is that we can kind of see how these places are connected and also see ourselves in these other scenes. Kids playing on the streets in the Philippines look just like the kids playing on the streets here in Brooklyn, New York, where I live. And so the way that those things are interconnected, both environmentally and communally, just in terms of the humanity of it.
Let's talk a little bit about those illustrations, because throughout the book, different locations around the world are presented. So tell us a bit about those and the illustrator that you work with.
The illustrator is Brooke Smart, and she is absolutely wonderful. I mean, she illustrated all the books in this series and the series about families as well. I'm really lucky to have been paired with her. I think it can be a little bit nerve-wracking as a picture book author if you're not also the illustrator, because, if you get paired with an illustrator that you're not crazy about, that's your book. But the art director at Rise, which is the publisher, found her and they worked together to come up with these illustrations. And then there's a little bit of a back and forth in this book. For example, so my wife is from Trinidad and my family plays carnival in Trinidad most years. And so she snuck a carnival costume that one of my kids wore into the Brazil carnival spread, even though we play in Trinidad. And there's a beach scene, which is a favorite beach in Tobago that we travel to a lot. So some of it is personal. She even snuck a picture of my family into one of the family's books, which was really sweet. But I love her art. I mean, when we were choosing an illustrator, I delivered just a series of adjectives to the editors, and just like I want something warm, I want something hand drawn. I think this is really important for this type of book and for the messaging in here. And they found just the right person. She has really warm drawings, and sort of her little family vignettes, I think, are just so beautiful.
So this is a board book. For what age are these books intended?
I think this one is listed as like 3 and under. So first books. Our youngest readers will get this book. The ones that can put a book in their mouth and not come away with a whole page stuck between their gums.
So what is it you like about writing for this age group?
I love the idea of presenting these kind of big, very important ideas in in the simplest form. So introducing ideas of diversity and interconnectedness and community, and the way we rely on each other, and can celebrate each other's differences. Sort of like these big ideas that are important for us too as adults to kind of remind ourselves about. The challenge and the the art of distilling that to a way that a child can enjoy.
So you mentioned that this is a good message for adults as well, and adults are going to be reading this book to children. So even though the language is simple to appeal to that age group, do you also keep that adult audience in mind as well, because they're the ones that are going to be reading it?
Absolutely. So, I mean, my first series and my career as an author began because of a music education podcast for kids that I make called Noodle Loaf. And with a kids podcast, you very much have a captive audience because, the parents are often, it's not like a TV show where you're like, here, take this iPad and go away, leave me alone, daddy needs to shower. This is in a car. So I got in the habit of kind of playing to both audiences. And also, with my own kids, I know the books that get read the most often are the ones that I also am really drawn to, especially when they're really young. The ones that I like to read, that are fun to read, the rhyming text I find particularly enjoyable to read, and make up little songs about it. So, I want the adults to also be interested in the text and moved by the text and the illustrations. I think that's really important.
Dan, as you mentioned, this is one in a series of books for very young readers. So actually, they're not reading them. The parents are reading to them. So I guess very young listeners to the books. Why is it important to introduce these concepts at a very early age to children?
The first book was actually inspired by a song that I had written. And that song was written when I was feeling a little bit dismayed, reading the news and just seeing some of the decisions that adults who have power were making. And I tried to imagine if I could go back in time and write a song that this adult would have heard as a child that might have led them to grow up to be a kinder, more empathetic adult, what song would I write? That concept has kind of guided all of these books, and a lot of the songs that I've written for children. Not all of them. Some of the songs that I've written are just silly, or a story. But at least some of them are kind of coming with that mentality. I'm inspired very much by songwriters like Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger. These are singers that I grew up with. And Pete Seeger famously had written on his banjo, "This machine surrounds hate and forces it to surrender." And, I think of that in the creative act. What can we do creatively that can bring a little bit more kindness and empathy into the world of adults, and kind of plant those seeds in kids. And, so that's my hope, at least for these books, as well as them just being pretty to look at and joyful to read.
Now, earlier you mentioned your podcast, Noodle Loaf. Tell us more about that.
So my background is in music and music education. And this is a podcast that I started when I had my first child, sort of trying to really just create the podcast. I like listening to podcasts, adult podcasts, but trying to create the show that I wished existed, and using a lot of the music education training that I have, so that the show is very interactive. Each episode is a series of interactive segments. So repeat after me songs, rhythm games, movement games, and I think they're really fun. They teach music fundamentals, but not in any way that a child or maybe an adult would even pick up on. It's fun, it's silly, but it's also it's teaching different self-expression and improvisation and phonological awareness, these kinds of big educational words, but it's mostly just kind of a goofy good time with music, and perfect for car rides, as opposed to people being, I guess, in their own digital bubbles in a car. It gives an opportunity for the family to play together in a musical way.
The book is We Share This Earth by Dan Sachs. Dan, thank you for talking with me today.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
If you'd like to purchase We Share This Earth, I've placed a link for you in the description below. Thank you for watching this edition of the Kids Bookshelf. And if you'd like to see more videos about children's books and their authors, be sure to subscribe, like, and click on the bell to be notified about future programs. And if you're interested in books for young adult and older readers, be sure to check out my Some Books Considered channel. You'll find a link to that below as well. I'm Dan Skinner. Until next time, keep sharing the gift of reading.